Hi, I'm Karcy.
I'm Derek.
And I'm Sam.
And this is Unpacking Homelessness, the podcast where we take a deep dive into the issues surrounding homelessness in our communities. Let's get into it.
Hi, Tiffany.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, good morning.
This week on Unpacking Homelessness, we're joined by Tiffany, a Colorado native who grew up in Inglewood. She's worn lots of hats over the years, from working in the music industry to running retail in the Bluebird District on Colfax. She's a practicing astrologer, bringing a thoughtful, intuitive vibe to everything she does. Her mix of lived experience, creative work, and deep community roots gives her a unique perspective into what's really going on into Denver when it comes to housing and homelessness. Welcome, Tiffany.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you on. I apologize for my voice. I've had bronchitis and it's day 12 or something. So it's, really trying to give out on me. But
It's got to be a record.
Probably sounds a little brutal. I'll try not to do too much talking today.
It does sound brutal. Yeah, my allergies definitely kicked it up last week, and my throat was like closed up, and I can't relate to bronchitis, but
bronchitis like sounds much worse than it is. It's one of those that sounds like horrific, but it's really just like a cough. Like
maybe for you, I had bronchitis about a month ago and it kicked my butt harder than anything has kicked my butt in years.
Well,
so I think it depends. Maybe you're just...
It depends. The side effects. The side effects of bronchitis.
You're just being brave, Sam. 12 days is no joke.
Yeah.
There were some brutal moments, I guess. Yeah, that's for sure.
You're going on 3 cruises in 12 days.
Woo! Okay. Yes, Tiffany. So you grew up in Colorado, is that right? In Inglewood, Colorado.
I grew up in Inglewood, which is about 10 miles south on Broadway from proper downtown. And the homelessness problem then growing up here was very secluded to downtown. And downtown, prior to Coors Field, it was really only the theater district. We had the Denver Performing Arts Complex, and people would go down there for that. And otherwise, it was 9 to 5 businesses. People, worked downtown. So the homeless population was pretty secluded down there, always near the train tracks, always near the Platte River, but it wasn't visible. And that is one of the biggest changes, I think, that we've been seeing just over the course of, at least my lifetime. So the last, since I've been paying attention the last 30 years, is the visibility factor and the migration factor. Because obviously there are people that are experiencing homelessness and they are in the suburbs. And that really makes you wonder where we're failing these people.
Yeah. Do you think that the homeless population in Colorado or in Denver has grown, or do you think it's just become uncovered? Almost like with the gentrification of like the Rhino district and everything, if there were places where people were kind of taking like Safe Harbor and kind of, bunkering down and homesteading. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but if people were kind of settled in more comfortably in some areas, that then became developed and everything, and so they have to move out. And so do you think it's grown, or do you think it's just more visible?
I mean,
hard to say, I'm sure.
It's hard to say, right? Because we're now collecting data like we've never collected before. And Yeah, the Rhino district was all warehouses and a lot of them abandoned. And I'm sure that there was places in the city that they could seek refuge, at least from the elements that have been eliminated.
Right.
So that's really, it's hard to say, but I mean, I like that we are trying to track the data. I know that we recently released, didn't the mayor release some data on how many homeless people we had, people experiencing homelessness?
Yeah. From what we can tell, that's always a hard number to pin down.
Yeah.
I think it was 8,000. Let me see. Let's see. Yeah, we know the mayor's been making some changes to like budget allocation and like qualifications for nonprofits and shelters and people who receive those budgets. But yeah, looks like the most recent one number. This was from 2024 though, but 9,977. So about 10,000 people are experiencing homelessness in the major counties in Colorado, including Denver, Adams, Arapahoe, Douglas, Jefferson, and Boulder counties. So about 10,000 people. But again, everything that we've seen tells us, and the people we've spoken to as well, tell us that like that number is probably like a minimum. That's what they maybe can't get a head count on. So
right.
Yeah. And you can't account for people that are staying on people's couches, that sort of thing. So you've worked at a bunch of different places over the years, right? Has that mainly been in Colfax area?
In the last 10 years, yes, I have been working off of Colfax, and also in downtown as well. But the venues that I've worked at off of Colfax, specifically in the Bluebird District, is, we have our people in the community. I mean, it's the same people we see day in and day out that are experiencing homelessness, sometimes sleep in doorways of buildings, of shops, and move along when the day starts. And it's tough because we're existing with these people in our community, and most of the time we can coexist and it's okay. But there are times where there's definitely maybe a mental event or episode. Definitely during the frigid cold temperatures, we saw a rise in aggression, and definitely, again, maybe a mental event. So it's tough because what kind of solution is there to help them? Like, maybe they don't want what we think is a solution.
So you said you've encountered the same people regularly, and wondering what sort of conversations have you had with them? Do you have a sense of what they're looking for?
There isn't conversation per se. There is limited interaction. It's definitely, you have to realize that it's like two different walks of life of people existing in the same area, and they're just, I don't want to say there isn't the same type of logic. We aren't operating from the same level. We are operating very differently. Like, I would assume that a person experiencing homelessness is operating very much from a survival level. And therefore, the things that I'm operating from I need to worry about patrons and customers and safety and cleanliness around the area of where I'm working, outside, even volume pollution. They tend to scream or be very, very loud. And so, how can I meet them where they're at? Most times it's really a gentle moving along. This is a business. You aren't able to really loiter here. And so it's kind of, it's difficult because we're not dealing with the same, we're not dealing with like the same situation, and lens even.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard.
I'm from a smaller city. I think in Colorado, you'd probably compare it to maybe like a Longmont or a Golden or something like that. But I'm from a city north of Seattle, and there's a main street that runs through our city, and it's very akin to Colfax, in the sense of it's like a lot of restaurants and it's a lot of venues, and it's been there for 100 years. And so, like growing up in my 20s, in this city, it was a lot of, it was a lot of standing outside on the sidewalk at night in front of a music venue. And that's just what you saw all up and down Broadway, which was the street. And so I have an image of like what like you working at a venue and being responsible for, patrons, or just kind of like, at least, because is it, to my understanding, you did security a little bit
Yes.
for the venue. Yeah. So you were outside, kind of, I imagine, like outside, like with the patrons standing in line and kind of smoking cigarettes and doing whatever it is that, that we do in front of venues. And then I'm sure there were like interactions oftentimes.
There's
with a certain type of, it's, we like to emphasize here that like the, homeless population, it's such a broad, like there's so many different experiences that people who are unsheltered are having. So I don't want to say they are having interactions with like homeless people. I just want to make it clear that we're talking about kind of a specific community of people who are experiencing homelessness, right? It's kind of the wanderers, like people who wander around the street and maybe they're a little disillusioned and maybe they're on drugs or a little bit more in your face with it, I would say, with their experience. It's a little bit more like you said, shouting and things like that. Did you feel pressure at all, or did you feel inclined to ask certain people to like leave or like not stand around, or did you feel that it was okay so long as they weren't being disruptive?
Even when there was disruption, unless there is any sort of inclination or worry for safety, we let them be. I think there's sometimes the patrons that are belligerent drunk are potentially more problematic than a person experiencing homelessness. But that's one of those dichotomies of being on Colfax, is you potentially could be standing in line to get into a show, and there is a person that is waiting for your cigarette butts or to ask you for some spare change. And that's kind of the reality that we're in. And you can't ignore it. But again, if there's not a risk for safety concern, there really isn't a reason to disrupt the person.
Yeah.
Unless they're trespassing. And so, there's a whole slew of kind of where you're tiptoeing around the issue. The issue is for a business owner. I'm not, but like for the business owner is, does this hurt business? And then we're removing the human element out of it. And even coexisting and ignoring the problem, it kind of is also removing the human element from the situation.
Yeah. When you've been working these venues, how did you observe the other patrons interacting with the homeless population? Were there certain ways that they were interacting with them that you either felt like, oh, that's this, we're coexisting in a space and everything is working well, or were there times where you were like, wow, you guys, like, turn on the empathy? Like, what have you observed in that?
Yeah. Again, it's kind of like put your blinders on,
Mm.
and we had a job to do, and the people were there to experience a live music event. And so there is a lot of kind of just, I wouldn't even call it coexisting, but you're just still going through the motions, kind of pretending like that's not happening
Mm.
next to you.
Yeah. Well, and so it sounds like a lot of the times when you've interacted with the homeless population, it's been for work. And so you do sort of have that perspective of like,
Hmm.
I'm here to work, right? I'm not just hanging out and taking it
Right.
all in. But I know that also in your experience as an astrologer, um,
Hmm.
that is, observation is a big part of how you navigate that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, my teacher, Deborah Silverman, always says to turn on your observer. And that is an active practice. Like it takes practice. So from an observer standpoint, from an astrologer standpoint, I realize that everybody has very different charts. They all have very different purposes, and some are already born pretty spiritual. And so I wonder about some of this population that is experiencing homelessness, if there wasn't a way for them to operate within our normal society, if they were almost outcast, or there's so many different things, but I don't know that our solutions that we have currently are actually good for some of these people. And astrologically speaking, we're coming into a time where we're gonna be innovating more. And so there's gonna be brand new ways to look at these issues. And I feel very hopeful about that, that we are starting this conversation, and that there will be some minds out there that have a way to look outside the box to help create maybe a sustainable community for these people, not just a tiny home community. Or what is it that they are looking for? Is it basic income? Is it just shelter? You know, what do they want for their lives? We can't just go on assuming that we know what's best. And so
Right.
that's kind of what I keep thinking about.
Kind of like we've created this system, this society that we operate in, and it's such a norm, go to work, get a house, pay your bills, do that. And it's there's freedom in it and there's looseness in it, but that's the system. That's the basic skeleton. Those are the bones of it. And for people who maybe are just not down with that, what do they do? Where do they go? You know, if not starting a commune, what do you do if that's just not your style? You know, and we've been around far longer than this societal structure has. And perhaps it is intuitive for a lot of people to just find something deeply disturbing with that structure. And maybe it's a little, yeah, I mean, what do you think about that?
I could go way out into left field, but I'm not.
No, go
Please
ahead.
do.
Get out there.
I mean, it's you know, what it as a society, when we're trying to help these our fellow human, what is the goal? You know, is it to get them to be worker bees? Are we upset that they aren't worker bees? Is that really what the underlying thing is? As we see, oh, that's 10,000 people that could be doing work right now. And for, you know, below living wage. And you do give up a certain kind of freedom, I think, and also what is, you know, where's their moral compass? Like it might not be aligned with selling your soul to appear normal.
Yeah.
You know, and uh it's we're just at such an interesting time too, where, you know, I am lucky that I have support, but I make very little money. I would be homeless myself if I didn't have help and support from people around me, because I don't make I make below I make poverty level. And so I have to get really creative with my finances. And that's working multiple jobs. So if I were forced out of this life tomorrow, it doesn't look too bad over there, because there's so much stress, there's so much worry, there's so much anxiety that comes with just trying to survive in society, that I wonder, like, when you think about, yes, they are in survival mode, and that is stressful, and they're constantly searching for food, potentially water, shelter. But I mean, it's six one, half dozen another. You know, what stressors are you willing to take on, and what path do you want to walk?
Well, and we hear about housing first all the time, and I sometimes wonder if that's an oversimplification, because the logic is you start with housing, give them the chance to work on themselves with the most basic needs met in that way. So I get the logic of it. But even housing, that's the life that society wants for them. And many
Right.
don't prefer that. They're fine living on the street. And so it's yeah, I think to your point, it should be something that's more collaborative. Figure out what they need. I'm reading a book called Stranger in the Woods, and it's
Hmm.
about a guy who's severely autistic, and he just dropped off the map, lived off grid for 26 years, and I think that could um, be a similar thought process of what some of the unhoused population is going through. He doesn't fit into societal norms, and so
Right.
he's kind of made his own life for himself. He ended up doing a lot of stealing and breaking into people's houses, and so it's not a great model, but just in terms of what somebody's thought process might be, I feel like that's a little more of the type of demographic we might be working with.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes sense to be, in the city and even sprawl out into the suburbs to be where resources are.
Mm-hmm.
There's resources there, whether it be dumpster diving or panhandling. But yeah, what is the most basic need? And what do some of these people want to accomplish for their lives? They might not have goals that we consider goals. They might just be living day to day, and in that presence, they probably are more spiritually connected than most of the population because they really are just there in the moment.
Yeah, we say people, we hear the term a lot, like living on the street, or even like, oh, they would rather live on the street than, and that might be true, but they probably don't see it like I'd rather live on the street. I'm sure a lot of people, if that's their mindset, are like, I would rather not live in this structure. Like I would rather live on the earth. I would rather live like just on the earth to my own devices. Carsey and our father was homeless, and I would say he chose to be homeless after years of being a dad and working and raising us and holding down the house and stuff. I think that he never really wanted that lifestyle, and it took me a while to realize that my dad, it wasn't that like my dad became homeless. It was that I was raised by somebody who always wanted to be out of that structure. And then he finally was. And when I met up with him, when I could find him and meet up with him wherever he was so much more himself. Like he seemed comfortable for like the first time. He wasn't like grumpy and coping, self-medicating, although he was self-medicating. Like he did do drugs, but for something about him living outside of the house, his drug use was different. It seemed more recreational, and it seemed like something he did after he took care of what he needed to do that day. So, and he might be a rare case, but definitely opened my eyes to the fact that some people just don't want to, they're just not aligned with like this structure of society that we've built. And yeah, and it's interesting. And then all the resources being in the city. So of course, people who are living outside of that structure, if they do need shelter or free food or something like that, the easiest place to get that is these resources that are in the city. And then, if they do try to homestead and set up these encampments in the woods, a lot of times those get cleared out. People complain, and the city has to come in and clear out those encampments. So it really is a conundrum. Like, where do you live if you can't live in the woods and you can't live in the city, and you don't really want to go through all the hoops you need to go through to like live in a house, and you don't need to, well,
it's an active protest. Like, I think we're going to be seeing this more and more.
That's an interesting way to.
That's a term for a lot of people that are doing this actively, and it's not just people without houses. It's the societal norms, exactly what you're saying, Tiffany, of not wanting to just be on the rat wheel and do things the same way that everybody else is doing. I think I keep using the term rat wheel, which is great because it's actually hamster wheel, and I can never pronounce it right the wrong way that I'm saying it.
Rat wheel.
I feel like I've done this 3 times.
Rat race,
rat race,
and
hamster wheel. That's what
rat
it is.
race. That's
so you just combined them.
Yeah.
I get it.
I like it.
When I was a teenager, I was like, I'm not gonna go to college. I'm not gonna like this
Oh
is a
yeah,
sucker's game. Yeah, I
same.
totally felt that. But then you realize like, oh, I'm not built to survive like
Yeah.
out there, you know, but I think I probably, I don't know, maybe I could be built to survive out there. But so in some ways it's just for some of us, especially those of us who I think were born into even just a little bit of privilege, it's easier to just keep up the status quo, you know?
Yes.
And perhaps people who weren't born into that privilege from the start, and they're like, well, I could either work really hard to get into that rat race, or I can just find it in my own way, you know?
Mhm.
Could see how that would be a more, I don't know,
Yeah. Well, that's the
accessible
part that makes
option.
sense about the housing first is, if once you have your most basic needs met, then that allows you to pursue whatever, and that's kind of the traditional American way, which is great, and that can be empowering. But yeah, maybe is that not the first place to look, housing?
Yeah,
It's
I
worth
mean,
Yeah.
considering more.
I think there's a sect of people who do want to be reintegrated into society. They do want to have a job. They do want to live a life that maybe they had lived and were comfortable in at one point, and circumstances changed that. So I think we need to think about the situation in the way that we think about the housed population. I mean, we have so many different types of jobs we can choose from. We have so many different types of education that we can pursue, whether that's getting your GED or going to high school or whatever. Like, we just acknowledge that the housed population is diverse and complicated and has lots of different needs. And some people are gluten free, and some people are dairy free, and some people are Christian, and some people are Buddhist. And like, we just acknowledge the variety of people. And it's not until we start to think creatively about the unhoused population that we're going to be able to start solving these issues. What if there were farms where people could work and grow food for their community, and they had housing provided, but they didn't have to be on, like, I just think that there's so many ways that we could solve this if we were able to think about things from their point of view and listen to them, listen to lots
Mm.
of different people, and realize that, like, you guys are also very diverse and complicated and have a wide array of needs and wants. And why is it just either be housed or be unhoused?
Mhm.
Work your butt off to try to survive in this crazy world, or don't work and have none of your essential needs met. There's just no middle ground. And I think maybe part of what you're saying, Tiffany, is like, and I would love to dig more into this of what you alluded to, which was about it being a time of awakening, essentially, right?
Hmm.
It's a time where people are starting to innovate and be more creative and think about solving issues in a way that's a lot more heart-led, I think, and a lot less money-led. I think we're starting to realize that, like, we don't have to do it this way just because that's how we've been doing it. It's clearly not working for a vast amount of people. And so I want to know a little bit more about that. Like, when you say that, we're coming to an age of innovation, and I've also been hearing a lot of that enlightenment, right? And human
Hmm.
connection. What are you seeing with that, with your astrology and the other things that
Yeah, we have the outer planets that move the slowest, and they will have all shifted. Uranus is next. It's moving from Taurus into Gemini, and um, Uranus represents sun and change, innovation, technology. It rules Aquarius, which Pluto moved into Aquarius this year. And we just had Neptune move into Aries, or Saturn move into Aries. Neptune moved into Aries. So we have a lot of fire and air happening right now. And that is going to be innovation, fast, and who knows what's going to come. This is an exciting time because we really don't know. We know that everything that we've been trying to make work hasn't been working even since the pandemic. Like, we can't go back to the way that we used to run things. It's not working. And people are waking up to their power. And that's where we're going to see that we actually hold the power. We are the majority and not our ruling government or what have you. And so it's in with regard to the homeless situation, it's like, why do we need one solution? Why can't we have options? Like, why don't we figure out like how we can help people, but not just group them together as one entity? Because it is one issue, but it's so much more complex than that. And we have to not make everything so black and white. There's grayscale. And how can we really dive in, see these people as human, listen to what their needs are, and figure out new ways to meet them where they're at?
Do you have any opinions on universal income?
Um, I think that everything I've read about the little projects that have been across the United States is fantastic. It showed that most people were using their money toward housing and food. And I think that's wonderful. And I think that if we can't meet the growing inflation appropriately with income, then yes, even I could benefit from a basic income subsidiary. You know, I am a
Yeah,
full-time working citizen, and not all of my needs can be met financially from all of my jobs.
I am coming around more to that. I always really liked Andrew Yang, and he was my introduction to that when he was running for president. And I was a little against it at first, just thinking that it would maybe promote more laziness. But exactly what you said with the massive difference in housing costs, cost of living, to just have a basic amount that it's not enough to thrive by any stretch, but enough to kind of have your basic needs met. And as we get more and more into AI and replacing more jobs, I think exactly what you said, we're gonna have to be more creative on options, whether for basic population or unhoused.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and it's interesting, like the direction I hope we go into as a society is one where we stop valuing, kind of like you said, like the how much labor can we squeeze out of each human, right? Like how much can you produce in your lifetime? How much can you accomplish? How much money can you make for the company you're working for? How many hours can you actually squeeze into your week? Like it just seems like if we can make a shift as a society to realize that you were born onto this planet at this time, and because of that, there are just foundational things that you have a right to. You have a right to be housed, whether you're working or not. You have a right to eat enough food to nourish your body, whether you're working or not. You have the right to have an education that I think ultimately could make people want to work and learn where they can put, and I don't mean work like in a factory. I mean like go teach kindergartners or go do something that's of service to their community, right? It's just really interesting. I hope that we get to the point where we can start really acknowledging that the amount of output each human can accomplish isn't correlated to their value on this planet. You know, that there are other things that you are worthy of doing. Maybe you're just a really great listener. Like maybe that, and I'm sure that there is, like, because there's so many different types of people. Perhaps there is a wise homeless person in your community that's helping guide other people just in their soul, just in their life path, and they're not being paid for that or compensated in any way, and it goes largely unnoticed, but it's so valuable and it's so important. And it just would be really cool if as a society, we could just sort of shift our mindset away to just this physical production of your value.
yes, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
You alluded to spirituality earlier on the different, not to put words in your mouth, but plane that the unhoused might be on. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, this is just my observer, and I love to just theorize what is happening. And yeah, I mean, when I see people yelling on the street or, talking, it clearly looks like they're talking to nobody. But I'm wondering if they don't have one foot in the spiritual world and they can see a different dimension that we can't see based on our societal positioning.
Yeah, my friend just told me about a book called, I want to say it's called The Dark Thing. I don't know if you've read that, but it's about that exact thing. It's about, long story short, this person who is deemed to be insane by the rest of the world, but eventually they're actually seeing things that are there. So that's such a fascinating thought is, that person that is so removed and in their own world is actually interacting with something that we just can't experience.
Right, right. Whatever that may be, you know. And, everybody is talking about these telepathy tapes. Like
Mm.
this is huge news. But as a spiritual person and an astrology astrologer, I'm like, of course, nonverbal people could be telepathic. Like
Mhm.
that, yeah, like
Yeah.
absolutely. And I definitely believe in telepathy and psychicness. And so it's funny, but these are the things that are becoming, this is what it takes for the masses to accept this version of reality, that these things aren't science fiction, they do exist, and we can study them further and we can acknowledge that they exist.
That's really interesting. The thought that like technological advancement could ultimately lead to greater empathy for other humans and the way that their brains work and the way that they experience things. Because there's a lot of people that like I think can acknowledge like, oh, you think differently than I think, and like you're a soul, and they can make these rationalizations. But I think for a lot of other people, if it's not scientifically studied, it's not real. You know what I mean? If I can't see data on it, I can't quite believe it. So if we can start
Until you
quantifying these
experience
things,
it. Yeah.
yes, yeah. That's such a cool thing to think about. I think sometimes it feels like technology is pulling people apart in a lot of ways. Derek, I know we've talked about this quite a few times with social media and everything. You have more friends than ever, but you're also lonelier than ever. And, there are so many more people that are just like head down in their own world, AKA their phone. And so it's really exciting to think about the idea of technology actually bringing people together in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see that. I think we'll see, a little bit of, hopefully, I don't want to say a revolt, but like a
Hmm.
social media breakdown. Like this isn't, I think we've probably already seen it with younger generations not subscribing to Facebook and whatnot. Like they don't get it. They don't like it. And I think we will see a new, we're going to move into something different.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's the big population that's moving away from smartphones to dumb phones. They're
Hmm.
calling it. I'm more of the mindset to steer away from technology, remove more and more of it to be more connected to people, have more FaceTime. But at the same point, I'm working on a side project with AI. I want to learn about it and know about it and not be scared of it, kind of
Yeah.
know what's out
Yeah,
there.
be
But
friends with
yeah,
it.
I think just the ability to have FaceTime with people, connect with people on a human level, it's very important to remove it. That's my current stance that I'm willing to change as I learn more about what's out there.
I mean, the answer is probably in the middle, right? Like everything else, it's probably somewhere in the middle.
I mean, we're on a Zoom call right now, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think there's so much opportunity to connect in a way, again, across states, across the world, and and also share information. And that is where we're finding our power. And so it's just going to keep building momentum. And I think we're, with AI, I see it as work smarter, not harder. And that we'll figure out a way that it's not going to steal jobs. Hopefully, it will create, again, it's like if we had universal basic income, then we're not worried about what is going on if we're trying to just be more efficient in life as opposed to, making working harder.
Hmm.
Everybody is burnt out from working so hard.
It's true. Yeah, there's so many times where and I don't even work as hard as these two, I feel like half the time. And like it's just that there is this subscription to the rat race that you just are kind of born into. And unless you're aware enough, I think, or you're forced to, in some cases, remove yourself and see a different way that things could be, I wonder if there are a lot more people that would actually choose other options and
Right,
just haven't been able to, or it hasn't really occurred to them that that's even a possibility.
right,
Well,
Yeah.
and I know several of us have talked about this over the years too, but the weirdness that normal society is to not move into a place where you know your neighbors. It's more normal to know zero people that you're living and surrounding yourself with all the time. And that's super odd. The commune community standpoint makes a whole lot more logical sense, and I feel like that's a much more realistic way to help each other meet each other's needs.
Hmm.
absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that and often think of how can we start to create these subset communities or communes. I know there's a lot of people, again, that are also, they have these thoughts, and then it's like, how do we get there? So maybe we will start to see that come to fruition.
Yeah. I wanted to, I'm so fascinated by all the astrology stuff. And so Sam and I had a reading with Tiffany a little while ago. It must have been a couple months ago now, and it was amazing. You're an incredible astrologer. And one of the things that struck me in this reading, not only with how present you are while you're reading someone, but also with how you're so able to intuit things about them that maybe like for myself that maybe I didn't even think about. I'm like, oh man, that's a really interesting thing. Like maybe that's kind of why I'm like this, in certain ways. Um, and you've read it this, I mean, you've been reading since I want to say you said 2020 astrology.
I started my journey in 2020 and with self-education.
Hmm.
And then I did do a course a with a dear friend, and that was great. And then I was like, I need more. And so I was always kind of practicing reading charts. I finally took the leap to join Deborah Silverman's Applied Astrology in the fall of 2023. And that was the actual substance that I needed to feel confident in doing astrology readings. It was like it's been my light bulb for astrology and really gave me a way to bridge all my foundational learning about astrology to be able to translate it into chart reading.
And to trust, I imagine. Like, when you're sitting down, I dabble with tarot cards. That's sort of something that makes me feel comfortable, and it's a medium that I really relate to. And I think so much of that is confidence. So much of that is feeling like this is what I'm feeling, right? And all this woo-woo stuff comes with so much taboo and baggage anyways, that you already sort of have that judgment on you when you're doing it, You're like, I imagine trying to like prove them wrong for some people, But I know that for my reading with you, it really made it so apparent that like people's life, I'm just going to say people's life, that their path is very nuanced. And there's a lot of times where it seemed like certain things that for me that I had gone through showed up in my chart, and that people's journeys were, I don't want to say predetermined, but there were indications that you were going to be going through these things at some point. And I'm curious to ask, having read as many people as I'm sure you have at this point, how has that influenced the way that you view people who are experiencing homelessness?
Yes, that's a great question. Everybody has a unique purpose here, and the chart doesn't lie. And there might be like, so there's generational placements, like there's outer planets where we'll have the same, Pluto in the same sign, North Node. But all the aspects, all of the different planets and houses, I have not seen the same chart yet. And it's really to view homelessness from the astrology lens. I think about it like, what is triggered in me? What is this mirror? What am I feeling when I see this person? What does it invoke in me? And that is what I can change or affect. Does it make me disgusted? Does it make me sad? Does it make me want to become actionable? And then I go from there, and here we are, right? Like I do have and have had all of those feelings and judgments, and it's like, not how can I not have a judgment, and how can I show up authentically and see this is a human, and also how can I help them without being intrusive? Or, I think something that you talked about in your why was even just, eye contact. Sometimes that can't always happen because you don't want to make that connection. Say you're walking down the street, but you really just sit with what it makes you feel. And that is, I believe, how we can begin to affect change in policies, change in allocation of funds, like just sitting with our own personal judgments on a visible person experiencing homelessness.
I
Yeah.
respect that level of self-reflection. That's great. I have a question so when somebody sits down with you, how
Mm-hmm.
much of um, how much of it, from your standpoint, is asking questions and getting to know them, or drawing off their energy? And do you tend to get a sense before you've even had any interaction? How does that look on your end?
Yeah, so I'll do chart preparation, and so I make my notes, and but there is a special secret sauce when you're sitting with the person, whether it be on Zoom or in person, that you're intuitively picking up on cues. or you hear parts of their story and it's like, oh, let me tell you about this aspect or this transit. So you are wanting to hear the person's story because all I have is my data of who they are, and then they bring the flavor and I can say, oh, well, you might be stubborn because, you know, your Venus is in Taurus and that's the low road, but your Venus in Taurus is at home and safe in that sign, and it wants to be a lover and it wants to be at home, and so yeah, there's ways that being with the person, the chart is actually born, comes
Yeah,
to life.
you need the context.
Yes, the context. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and when you were reading my chart, one of the things that you uh, showed me was that this was the time in my life where I was going to be going through an enlightenment, a spiritual interest, and that's totally true. And there were a lot of other things that you pointed out that I thought were interesting, but the journey in particular is something that fascinates me because I wonder if you were to be able to read a a certain number of people experiencing homelessness right now, if you would see in their charts that
Mm,
there were things that certainly predisposed you to having a rougher life, and the cards stacked against you in a lot of ways, in ways that you maybe wouldn't see with the general population. But also maybe you would see, you know, indications about them being enlightened in ways where it was like you were never going to be able to fit into this mold. This was,
yeah.
I can see that this was always going to be a difficulty for you. Or I can see that right now you're going to be going through a really tough time and trying to figure out how to navigate who you are and what you want and where you fit. But I see coming up down the road in a certain period of time, you figuring that out and just how hearing that message could be so helpful to them.
Yeah. Yeah. You absolutely can see levels of psychicness in aspects for, again, like telepathy. Um, and I believe you can kind of see when potentially a life event occurred. We could see in Sam's chart a life event occurred to change her trajectory. And so you can kind of see that it's not going to be completely defined. So yes, there's almost like a destiny, but it's also this free will and choice that determines what the event that is the catalyst for whatever happens in your life. Um, so that's where that magic is. But to understand like your progressed moon, which is going to change signs every 2.5 years and will affect your internal emotional body, that would be helpful information, like it definitely changes your internal perspective when your emotional body is influenced by a particular energy.
Yeah, and I think like um society, we tend to think like if someone is experiencing homelessness, like you did these things. And I'm just generalizing to the typical population, but you did these things, you made these decisions that led you to where you are. And there's very much like hoisted responsibility on that individual of like you got yourself here. So this is, you made your bed essentially, right? And so it's really interesting to be someone who's read so many charts and has, I imagine so many people be like, oh, yes, I can see how this path led to this path that led to this path, and how that validates in you that people have their own journeys and that I don't want to say that they aren't responsible, but that,
Mm,
there are certain things that may just predispose them to going through these harder times.
yeah, it all is perspective too, you
Yeah.
know. Again, there might be somebody that experienced an event, a hardship, and they lost their home. And there might be, again, somebody like your dad that was in a home and that was not, he didn't fit in that box. And so this isn't one solution problem to solve. This is going to be multiple, there has to be multiple brains working on how we can help our fellow humans in the way that is best for them, not what's best for us, because we don't want to see them or interact with them, or they're disturbing our aesthetic of our city. Like that is such a cruel, inhumane way to look at these people, and try to just, shove them in tiny homes in a community that doesn't want them. And, like it's just trying to get them off the streets. It's, to me, I hear that and it's like, you just don't want to see them anymore. You don't want to get them off the streets. You don't want to help them. You want them to not be visible anymore.
Yeah, you don't want to feel that discomfort.
Right. So I'm ADHD, so I don't know where I was going with that, but
well, just that people, essentially like people just want to hide them. They just want to not feel like they're an inconvenience or that they're an eyesore.
Right. And yeah, like being able to look at your chart or hear your chart translated, I wonder if it would be helpful. I wonder that a lot with some people I pass. I try to figure out, maybe what their sun sign is or their rising sign. I kind of view that through lots of people that I interact with. But yeah, I am just very happy that this conversation is getting started and that the three of you are, again, I felt very akin after listening to your why episode, because I felt very much the same way. I am interacting with these people. I do see them day in, day out. They are in my community. I can recognize their faces. I do know some of their names, and I don't know what I can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I am hoping that this movement, hopefully, of this conversation that you guys are starting, we start to find each other, because that is what was so special about reading for your charts and hearing your story. Was I felt exactly the same way, and how wild that we cross paths.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're doing one thing that keeps coming up that is you have empathy for them. You have empathy for people who are experiencing hardship, and that's one of the major gaps that we're hoping to fill with this podcast, to build it in ourselves even more and to just help people see and look at the world differently than they currently are. And this conversation, I'm sure broadened a lot of people's perspectives. People who are listening, I'm sure, are now thinking about the issue in ways that they never even considered before. So thank you for doing that work for us and have this conversation with us. And yeah, it's been a real pleasure to have you on. I'm also so glad our paths crossed.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind of you to say. And yeah, I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah.
I'm grateful.
Got a great energy about you.
Oh, thank you, Derek.
If people want to find out more about you and your astrology work, do you have a place they can go?
Yes, I have a website. My business is called Ascension Extension, and that's because I have a feeling like my business will evolve and won't just include astrology, but will have more to it. But the website is www.ascext.com, so short for Ascension Extension.
Nice.
And there you can find information about my in-person readings and also virtual readings. And my books are open.
Very cool.
Nice.
Well,
Oh,
she
thank
can.
you,
Oh, yeah.
Tiffany.
I'm on Instagram as ASCEXT_astro.
Perfect. Yeah, and as we said, we did readings with Tiffany and highly recommended. Highly
Oh,
recommended.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think that you have more readings to get to now, actually. It's a Saturday. So we won't hold you up any longer. Thank you again so much for joining us today. Your words have been very enlightening, and this conversation's been really inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and jumping outside of the box of the conversation as well. Like, what do I have to say about this issue? And so that was a big trust fall, and thank you. I love that you loved my perspective.
Well,
Yes.
just starting the conversation. We don't, like in our why video, we're not claiming to be experts. Having these conversations
Yeah,
are always helpful.
yeah,
Yeah, and there's so much that points to the idea that like curiosity is what's going to save us, you know. So let's do that.
yes, yes.
All right, Tiffany, have an awesome Saturday. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks,
Thank
Tiffany.
you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Tiffany. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
Bye.
All right, let's unpack that.
Wow, I'm really glad that we got Tiffany on the show. I think that it was kind of an abstract conversation compared to some of our other more pointed, this is a social worker or a mental health worker or someone who has experienced homelessness. But Tiffany is really a community member, just like us, witnessing issues, having her own thoughts on them, and then seeing things through a lens of an astrologer. Very interesting. One thing she said that she didn't say on the episode, but she did say when we had our first talk with her, is that she tries to not see things as good or bad or right or wrong. There's just things are happening, you
Hmm.
know? And
Yeah.
I love that. And I'm so glad we got to talk to her today.
Yeah, like I said, like curiosity. I mean, I think we've had so many episodes now have pointed to curiosity, especially Margie's episode. She really hammered that home. And kind of what you just said, Sam, like removing the judgment from things, I think is such a awesome place to start if we're gonna like really come up with creative solutions to these problems. Oh, we can't do that because of this, and we can't do that because of this. Well, maybe we could do that, and maybe we should stop judging these different possible solutions because they don't look the way that we think that they should look.
Yeah, and what she was saying about not trying to be all rose-colored glasses, where she's saying there's a real effect on businesses and not scooting over that. And I didn't hear that from a sense of judgment of just matter of fact. Our businesses are affected by this, but at the same point, we can't just put them into a certain area so we don't have to look at them anymore. It needs to come from a place of compassion. I thought she did a great job focusing on that.
Yeah, I get a little frustrated when I am in a group where I feel a sense of like, I don't want to see it, you know? Like if
Yeah.
I go into a city and there's homelessness or there's not, like I remember going into, I think it was when I first got to Colorado, I didn't see any homelessness for a while when I first got here. And I know it's very naive now in retrospect because I live in Denver. I live downtown, like in the city. And
But you
I don't
came from
know,
Everett, and I think maybe
I came
where
from
you
Everett
started.
where it's really
Yeah.
intimate. The community, it's really intimate. And so anyway, I didn't see much of it. And I remember feeling really uncomfortable by that. Like um
Mm.
because it exists. And so if you're not seeing it, it's not because like, oh wow, this city is so good at housing people. No, it's oh, the city's done a really good job hiding it, you know? And there's something eerie about that to me. And there's something a little disturbing about people being satisfied that it's not in their face, you know?
Yeah, what a privilege in a
Yeah.
way. It's like,
Yeah. And it's like, ew, that's icky. I don't want to see it. And it's just like, well, this is what all of your shopping on Amazon and all of your like, like everything that we're doing and all the luxuries that we have, there's a downhill to that. There's people paying an expense for all of the luxuries that we have,
mm,
and yeah, and just like we're okay with developing in an industrial area and we're okay with like gentrification when we're on the like benefiting side of it. But then
mhm.
we don't want to see what kind of sprawl that creates for the communities that are being displaced and now they're sprawling out into other areas, and we don't want to see that. It's almost like when we when we develop on an area that has animals and then now we're seeing coyotes and stuff in our neighborhood and it's like a big problem, and so we want to euthanize them, or we need to call animal control to come clean it up because
Right.
now
They're
they're
the
spread
problem.
because they're the problem and they're and now they're in our territory, and it's just, I don't know, to me it's like until we resolve the issue, until we actually find a way to you know help the communities merge of the haves and the have-nots, then we should be seeing it. We should be reminded that it's an issue.
You bet. Well, yeah, just stirring along the cost of living crisis. It's legitimately a crisis, and I appreciate how open she was about needing to work multiple jobs and how close, she feels to being one step away from being homeless. And yeah, to sweep it under the rug is to not address this massive concern that is going to continue to affect more and more people. So it's good to have it front and center. And if we can treat them like humans, that's a great start.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all points back to removing that judgment, I mean, if you saw someone who was, talking to themselves and pretty, removed from what we would consider the quote unquote real world, just giving them the benefit of the doubt of like that person really sees something. That's their reality. And just because I don't see it doesn't make it any less feasible that they're seeing that. And so that's just one example. But like being able to remove your judgment of other people and just acknowledge that they are on a different path that you're on. And your solutions may not look like their solutions, you know? And the more that we can, I think, acknowledge that and then also uh, actually get their opinions and their perspectives and their feedback on what they want. What would make your life feel meaningful? Maybe their life feels meaningful the way that it is, and who are we to judge that? But are there ways in which we can help restore more dignity and make sure that their needs are met and make sure that they're safe and our communities are safe by not judging, but just by more incorporating and building systems that meet them where they are instead of judging them for not being where we think they should be?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked what she had to say about the on the spirituality front when it comes to kind of what you're saying on they see something. Just because we don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And I think we probably rush to say mental illness every time. But there's so much more out there. It's a pretty big universe. I nerd out over those sorts of podcasts on aliens and extraterrestrial UFO stuff, and not because I take it all as fact, but there's a lot out there. There's a lot to consider, and I think that we can all stand to benefit by actually interacting with people more and hearing from them. And they in the trainings, then they tell you to not agree with what they're seeing, but you can acknowledge it and say and just ask questions. And I feel like opening up conversations is a good way to just kind of hear what their needs are and not trying to solve a problem that isn't a problem for them either.
Yeah, when you see someone speaking to themselves, instead of saying, if they ask you, do you see this thing? Instead of saying like,
Oh, what do you see?
yes, I see it. Say, no, I don't see it, but I believe that you see
Yeah,
something. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Just acknowledging that people are different and they're complicated. And yeah, I'm so grateful that Tiffany is out there doing this work and has this open perspective about what could be. And her whole acknowledgement that some people just don't want to be what you call, Derek, the rat wheel, which I thought was
Okay, so you had to
rat
step away for a
wheel,
minute, but I figured it out. Rat race, hamster wheel.
hamster wheel.
You're just
Yeah.
combining the two.
Yep. I
Rat
like
wheel.
rat wheel. I think that's
Rat.
better. Some people don't want to be on the rat wheel, they feel like this system that we're born into is for the purposes of producing and capitalism, and they don't believe in those ideals. But we don't have a lot of other structures to support other ways of thinking. And so I wonder if we just like considered that humans are complex. Humans have different needs and values and motivations, right? All people, housed and unhoused. And then just said, like, here are some other options of how you can still get
Yeah.
your needs met and contribute to society. I bet you there's a huge portion of housed people who are right on the edge to saying, screw everything. I'm selling all my stuff and I'm moving to wherever, right? Like, I'm done with this life. I'm tired. I mean, how many people are depressed or, possibly thinking about unaliving themselves because it's just too much pressure?
Yeah.
It's just so much pressure all the time. And we know that now more than ever, people are spending more of their money on housing. People are spending more of their resources just literally surviving. So their quality of life in other ways are suffering. And so it would be so cool to create some systems where people can participate in ways that are flexible and creative. And I bet we'd see a lot of housed people opting to take that route.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's so logical. I think that this was after we had all graduated high school, but they, at least in Marysville, they revisited the system and had the tracks where I forget you guys might know this better than I, but there's like an engineering track where you're focused on your
Mm-hmm.
classes are all geared towards certain subject matters that are more, science-based versus like a human resource, not human
Yeah,
resources.
we had,
Yeah.
it was
You know what I'm talking
after
about?
2008. It was because, like, we had a school of 2,000 kids at Pilchuck, and then they opened up the Getchell High School,
Oh, is it
and the
the whole
Getchell High
school?
School was all about small learning
Yeah.
communities. Yeah,
Which I don't know how effective it was or wasn't, but it's great that to
yeah,
consider other options because it's very logical. People think very differently. And
absolutely. I mean, I would argue that like nobody enjoys the rat wheel. None of us are like,
so
yay,
happy that's
I
catching on.
love being on the rat
Yeah,
wheel.
it's so fun to
And
run all the time.
yeah, like I love being a rat. No.
Yeah.
And like but I think that it's the benefits and what you get out of being on the rat wheel.
Mhm.
I can't say it, on the
I'm not
Yeah,
hamster
correcting
wheel.
you.
it's okay.
Um
It
in the
had its
rat
time.
race on the hamster wheel. I think that it's what you get. So like if by being on this hamster wheel you get these nice shiny things, and or even just a lifestyle. I get to have more children because I can
Hmm.
take care of more children or whatever it is. Like if that benefits you, and if that satisfies you, and if the output that you're getting from being in that race is worth it, then I think a lot of people are willing to be on it. And people, there's the whole hustle culture. Like people are into that. Like people are like, how much money can I make? How many things can
Hmm.
I get? How
I'll
many people
sleep
can I
when I'm
take care of?
dead.
Yeah. And it's not to say people are only doing it for like shiny objects and selfish reasons. A lot of people are like, no, I want to be able to take care of my entire family, you know, and that motivates me.
Or they like working. A lot of people
and I enjoy
working.
Yeah, maybe I enjoy working. I like having something to focus on and pursue. And so it's not like being the rat race itself that people enjoy. It's what they get out of it. But if what you get out of it isn't worth it to you, if you're like, yeah, I actually like, I'm kind of a one person show. It's just me, and you know, I can figure out to feed myself in other ways, and I don't need all these shiny objects. And you know, yeah, the security I get out of that is really not worth it. Then, and you were born into a situation like what we were talking about with Tiffany is like, if you were born into a family that's already operating on that, and it's really just a matter of you kind of taking the torch and like keeping it going, that's a lot easier decision to make than if you were born into a family that has not themselves joined it, like figured that out, or like wanted to participate or figured out how to participate, or there's, you know, or just don't have the means, or maybe you're not able-bodied or whatever. You would have to go from like a really unstable home or upbringing to figuring out how to get into the rat race and then to do it. And like, that's a much farther leap. So if you're calculating and you're like, well, I could work really, really hard and try to figure out how to like have these things, you're going to really consider how much you care about those things a lot more than somebody who's just born into a system that's already working. And then all you have to do is kind of show up to school and maybe go to college or get a job, or, you know, jump into it yourself.
You're making me think of this other. So I was in this organization called RPAC. It was a regional pre-apprenticeship collaborative. This was in Seattle. And there was like 5 different groups that you could go in. There was probably 40 of us that would all kind of introduce ourselves. We'd get the conversation started, then we'd break off into our groups. And I feel like there could be a great opportunity using that model for homelessness. Of, you know, we got an upcoming conversation with the coalition, and I'm curious. I bet you they got something in the works that I think,
Alderman.
Yeah. And that'd be great to just see what's out there, and maybe if we were to start something like that, of just brainstorming, having more conversations like this, and what are options. Bring some people from the homeless community that could, you know, talk about things. I feel like that could be like an actionable item to start making some progress.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it's really important. Okay, guys. Well, I hope you guys have a great day today.
Yeah, you too.
See you guys later.
Thanks for listening to Unpacking Homelessness. This episode was produced and edited by us. Our theme song is by Eric Lawson. You can find more of his music at soundcloud.com/eelaws. If you or someone you know would like to contribute to our show, get in touch with us at unpackinghomelessness@gmail.com. Until next time.